Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Raw Reaction series and the Arsenal Transfer Show, our morning 8 a.m. show, in which we give you guys the latest information regarding Arsenal's transfers. Hope you are good, hope you're well after what was an exciting day of European Championship football yesterday. It's like we were starved of football for a couple of days, and certainly it came back, with a vengeance, is the right way to put it. Some amazing games. France obviously going out to Switzerland, which makes the tournament a lot more open and with greater possibilities of maybe even a new winner of the competition. That would certainly be interesting. We got Belgium, of course, looking like maybe the favourites, but they do play Italy in the next round. We've got Netherlands going out and Czech Republic going through. And of course, Spain went through eventually after Croatia really did kind of test them in the final moment. Some really good stuff. And then today is the big one, England, Germany. So very, very much so interested to see how England get on against Germany and if they can progress. And fingers crossed they can progress. We're all hoping. Anyway, let's move on to the main part of the show and go through the transfers. Before we do that, please make sure you drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. Good morning to the chat box. Hope you're doing all good and all well. Hope the audio is fine for you. Let's cross over to our first story, which revolves around a lot which happened yesterday. And Granit Xhaka in particular. What a performance from the Swiss midfielder. No matter what you think of the guy, sometimes you just have to sit back and say, fair play. Fair play for that performance, because it was brilliant. It was absolutely excellent in its performance. And this will obviously affect the timing of when this deal from Arsenal to Roma seemingly gets done, because Switzerland now will move ahead to the quarterfinals, and that means that he will not be able to complete this deal until after the Euros are done. There was hope that maybe if Switzerland went out, it'd be done sooner, but it looks like it's going to take a little bit longer. He was asked after the game if he could do the interview in Italian, and he said not yet after the match. So, I mean, if he tells you kind of where your head is, and his head is rather, with this situation, then you kind of know. A lot of people were talking about the fact that this performance means that his value now shoots up. And I mean, I understand the theory behind it, but realistically, that's not going to happen. If we're being honest, most of his performances this season, especially in the second half of the season, have been akin to what we saw yesterday. He played very well in the second half of the season, arguably had his best season overall in an Arsenal shirt. So that performance against France shouldn't really come as too much of a surprise, really. It was still a shame to see plenty of people still criticising him. It does go to show it doesn't matter what you do sometimes. Once the writing is on the wall, for some people, that's it. There's nothing you can do, and that is it. But the rumours that came out from Italy today was that a deal of around 50 million euros is still very much the figure, and that's a real shame. I'm hoping that the deal is going to get done for a closer to 20 million, as reported by the likes of Chris Wheatley. So fingers crossed a deal around that figure will get done, but it was a little bit worrying to see some figures around the 15 million euro mark come out from Italy yesterday. Let's hope that they are slightly wide of the mark. Let's move on to our next story, which revolves around William Saliba. The French defender has obviously divided opinion on how we should deal with his situation. He's certainly not in the really kind of good graces, it seems, with Miguel Gutierrez, and he's set to, of course, go off with the Olympic side to Tokyo this summer with France. And what's interesting about the news which broke yesterday was that Newcastle and Lille are the two teams really vying for his loan signature, and that it seems with the incoming signing of Ben White, should that take place, that Saliba's future remains very much away from Arsenal in the short term. Whether or not this means that he has a long-term future at the club, we still have to wait and see. In my mind, if he is going to go on loan, it makes complete sense for him to go on loan to Newcastle. Lille makes no sense. He spent a year and a half in France already on loan. Add that to the additional years he spent there with Saint-Etienne too. It doesn't make any sense for him to do another year in France. Let him play in the Premier League, see how he fares, see how he gets on, and then we can make a really kind of direct comparison between his statistics in the Premier League compared to how he was in Liga and how he stands up against some of our own centre-backs next season. That is what's going to be really key for Arsenal. So Saliba does look indeed like he is going to be leaving the club on loan. Destination is still yet to be decided, but Newcastle, Lille, looking like possibly the two. I imagine there are a lot of other clubs also that are yet to be named in the mix as well, because he's a very popular player amongst clubs across Europe. So we'll see how that goes. Let's go on to Hector Bellerin, who obviously has been linked with a number of clubs this summer. We do expect him to move on. I feel like this is now a matter of time. It just depends on which club he chooses. His agent was supposedly in talks with Inter Milan, and we brought you news the other day about the fact that they want a loan with an option or a loan with an obligation to buy at the end of the season for around the 20 million euro mark. Now, the interesting thing about this is that this story links in with a couple other stories. Should Bellerin leave and go to Inter Milan? Well, Inter Milan's are also in discussions with the agent of Bellerin, who is also the agent of Andre Onana, a player that's been linked to Arsenal in the past. And should a deal be done for the Cameroon international goalkeeper, Inter Milan are certainly interested in that situation. And we'll be looking for a younger keeper to take the reins for them going forwards. He is banned until November, start of November, so he can't play till then. There's no indication that he's going to sign a new deal with Ajax. And Arsenal were quite heavily linked recently too, with a figure of around 7 million euros being touted because of the situation with his ban. So if Inter Milan get this guy, I'll be disappointed, because I really did want to see him pop up at Arsenal. I think it would have been a great signing to kind of improve upon Leno and give us that really kind of strong distributor from the back. There's also links because Bellerin could be leaving. Arsenal are going to be moving for another right back. And the name that's cropping up at the moment is Merh Mulder, the Sassuolo Turkish youth international, 22-year-old, plays for Sassuolo in Serie A. He's been linked with a move to Arsenal for quite some time now, but it's only kind of really come into the mainstream media through The Athletic over the last couple of days or so. And this is an interesting one, because when I spoke to Rich Hall, who we're going to be speaking to in a lot more detail a little bit later on, we will be doing a tactical breakdown show dedicated to Merh Mulder and finding out a lot more about him, is that he said this kind of deal makes a lot of sense for Arsenal. He rates him quite highly, and it would be a relatively kind of economically viable deal. It wouldn't cost loads of money to get done, and he likes it. So we'll make sure to give you guys a lot more information on Mulder in this afternoon's tactical breakdown on the Turk. So I look forward to giving you all of the information on that. Really do look forward to that one, because he's one I genuinely have not heard too much about at all. So I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more, as I hope you are too. We now move on to Marcel Sabitzer, another player that I know Arsenal fans have been kind of looking at the Euros and thinking, oh, wow, this guy's really putting in a shift for Austria, and he had done throughout the entirety of the tournament. He has his contract nearing its end with RB Leipzig, and that means that a figure of 50 million euros has significantly dropped to supposedly around the 17 million euro figure for any clubs that would like to purchase him. Arsenal are touted as one of those players. And I think for me, when we're looking at a player that can play in multiple positions as an 8, as a 10, as a 7, Sabitzer fills that role. He's exceptionally versatile. He's 27 years of age, becoming in his prime. I think he'd be a really, really good addition to the team. But whether Arsenal can get this deal done is another big question, and whether they actually would prefer to go for someone else in that area. But I think Sabitzer would be a really, really good option if Arsenal wanted to bring someone in. Let's go then to our second to last story, which revolves around Nuno Tavares, the Benfica left back. I'm getting better at my pronunciation. You don't actually pronounce the R in a hard way. It's just Tavares, it seems. I mean, he may come out in an interview and completely blow me out of the water with this one, but reliably informed, and how I know is because we did a tactical breakdown on him yesterday. And with the help of Jose Miguel, who is a Lisbon-based Portuguese football expert, he gave us the insight on Nuno Tavares to find out how good he is. And we did a breakdown. We compared him to Tierney. We compared him to Kolasinac and to Josh Doig as well to see how his stats linked up. We applied the context of the situation of him not playing too many minutes. But this deal seems to be moving ever closer, according to the reports that have come out late last night. And that Arsenal could get a deal done for around the 10 million euro, £7 million kind of mark. So there you go. This looks like it actually ended up could be Arsenal's first signing of the summer. Unless another one beats it. Before we go on to that, though, this show is out. If you are watching on playback, you should see a link above me at some point on the screen. If you're watching live, then make sure you tune back if you've not tuned in for that one that came out yesterday. But that is already out. Let's move on to the final story of the day, which... Oh, sorry, we've got one more story to talk about before we get there. This is Miguel Gutierrez, Real Madrid left-back, 19-year-old Spanish youth, really exciting talent from Real Madrid. I imagine that the Nuno Tavares links kind of put an end to this one, unless Arsenal are looking to get an even younger option in. But he was someone that the Athletic linked to Arsenal yesterday. We haven't done a show specifically on him because it's basically just interest from the looks of things. And the Nuno Tavares deal looks to have really scuppered any kind of hope of this one getting done. But annoyingly, he actually is very highly rated. I spoke to Alan Fearley, who writes for La Liga Lowdown and does their podcast as well. And he said that he really likes him as a player, which is a lot different to how we spoke to a lot of Portuguese experts and how they spoke about Nuno Tavares. So it's maybe a bit of a shame that we didn't get this one done over the Portuguese, but we'll have to wait and see to see what pans out. So Sambi Lokonga, the big news of the day. Now, I'm not going to talk you through this because, as you may have seen last night, Fabrizio Romano did tweet out this information. And Sasha Tavalieri, who is a Belgian football expert and journalist based in Belgium, of course, is actually going to give you the lowdown on this deal. So listen to what Sasha's got to say about the latest on Sambi Lokonga.
It as quick as possible and as complete as possible on the Lokonga's cases. For the moment, yes, there is a confirmation. There had been, of course, an official offer of to Anderlecht to 17.5 million plus bonus that can grow to 4 million. And there is again some details to regulate. It's not done. It's about the percentage on the future sell. So Anderlecht is asking 15%, but I'm really confident. You know, the player wants to go there. He asked to Anderlecht to find an agreement with the Gunners, so they are making all and everything so that the deal can be done. Also, Sambi Lokonga has already, as I told you precedently, an agreement with the Gunners. So everything is going to be fine within the next week, from what I know. And there is some good chances to see next year Lokonga with the shirt of the Gunners.
Massive thank you to Sasha for giving us that information on Sambi Lokonga's situation. It seems that this deal is, in fact, moving exceptionally close to completion now, which is really good news for Arsenal. The main thing, as Sasha said there, is that we need to sort out the sell-on clause. They want supposedly around the 15% mark. We know that Arsenal aren't too keen on sell-on clauses because we know that from the Emi Buendia situation, that they weren't too keen on that. So it does seem to be that it's very close, as we have been saying for quite a long time now. But the improved bid has supposedly been made of around 17 million euros with 4 million euros in bonuses, which could reach that level. So Arsenal could end up completing this deal for under 20 million, which would be really good business for Arsenal to get a player of this kind of quality, this potential, in as soon as feasibly possible in the window, and then we can focus on getting some more players out, and then we can get some more central midfielders in, because we certainly need to get in another top-level central midfielder into the team as soon as possible. And that does conclude all of the news for today's show. So thank you so much for tuning in for all of those. We do now move on to, of course, our Q&A section of the show for the last 15 minutes. So if you've got a question, you've got a thought or a feeling that you would like to ask about any of the links that we've had so far, then make sure you chuck those into the chat box. But please drop a like on the video if you haven't already, and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on. Clayton says, Tom, are there any players that have impressed you at the Euros that you would be interested in Arsenal signing? I think the players that you need to look for that are impressing at the Euros are ones that have impressed beyond just the Euros too. Marcel Sabitzer is certainly one of those, as we mentioned earlier, has been great for Leipzig and has gone into the tournament and continued to impress, which is really positive from that perspective. We've talked about a number of players, to be fair. I think Spinazzola at Italy has done really well and has played really well for Roma. I mean, if you haven't seen Roma's tweet It's a really fantastic comedic tweet they put up about why you've not seen Spinazzola before. Go and check it on their, I think it's their English Twitter page, which a lot of continental clubs have some very comedy-driven English Twitter accounts. So make sure you check that out. But he's been very impressive for Italy and has already been so for Roma as well. In fact, I can't remember who I was speaking to about it, but Roma, how Juve let him go is still beyond me. A lot of people in the chat box are saying Mbabu, who we did actually talk about in our possible right-back replacements for Hector Bellerin. He has good games and bad games. He needs to improve his consistency, that's for sure. But he was great yesterday when he came off the bench, put the ball in for Seferovic, of course, has actually started most of the games, but was taken out of the side due to inconsistency. And Vidma came in over him. So that does go to show you that there is a little bit of question about his consistency, and that's why he was taking out the starting lineup. But he's been okay for Wolfsburg. He suffered a big injury at the start or the end of the 1920 season. That's why Rydal Baku came in as a bit of a right back. Then when Mbabu became fit again, he took back the right back spot, and Rydal Baku played in front of him and looked really good as well. So two players there that certainly could be linked with a move to Arsenal. Kunjin says, good morning, Tom. Just in, the Swiss captain linked with a move to Arsenal after his display against France. Arsenal will make a concrete move for him soon. Again, I mean, if he wasn't linked to Arsenal, there would be an absolute clamour. If he wasn't an Arsenal player and he'd never been at the club, there'd be a clamour for Xhaka based off that performance. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind. Darren says, Tom, would you sign Switzerland's up-and-coming blonde midfielder? It'd be great if we could get him in, wouldn't it? Be absolutely fantastic. Jasmine says, Tom, how do you rate Kevin Mbabu? Do you think he could be a good replacement for our right back situation? As we talked about there, I think he's got consistency problems, but I think he is at a level that could, if he was to come in, can certainly work on that and develop to remove those inconsistencies from his game. But he's not a perfect replacement for Bellerin, that's for sure. Mo says, hi Tom, your thoughts on Albert Stuvenberg, like quality and coaching Wales? Of course, Stuvenberg's already at Arsenal, Mo. He's Mikel Arteta's assistant, and I have a lot of criticisms about his about the lack of challenge that the coaching, the backroom staff are bringing to Arteta's decision making. That's what I'd say about Stuvenberg. Thomas says, maybe I'm just ignorant, but what has Sabitzer done to impress you in the Euros? Looks wasteful to me. Lots of wild shots off target. Now, of course, a lot of players like to shoot from range. You can talk about the likes of Ruben Neves and Granit Xhaka, of course, and that's not something to really kind of assess a player on that. He's brilliant on the ball. He loves driving at the opponents, taking the ball and progressing it up the field. He takes on players like there's no tomorrow, and he's done that for RB Leipzig. He's versatile, can play in multiple positions, and ultimately be available for a really good fee as well, and has shown it on the Champions League level and now the international level as well. So Thomas, are all the reasons why he hasn't impressed me. Kevin says, Mateus Pereira would be great. Prem proven with 11 goals and 6 assists, better than our midfielders last season. I think that he has obviously shown to be of the level required to play in the Premier League and perform at the top level. And if Arsenal were to go in and get him this summer, I would certainly be okay with that. Iga says Dani Olmo looks quite good, who actually lost his place in the starting Spain lineup for a little bit. Sarabia has come in and done really well. Morata's kept that striking spot too. I can't believe that Ferran Torres is not starting at the moment. He just seems to come on and absolutely smash it every time from the bench. But Dani Olmo is a very, very good player, but I think he would go for an exceptional amount of money. You're looking at upwards of 50 million quid from Leipzig. He's got a long-term deal, a big buyout clause, so I think you'd struggle to get him in, to be honest. Let's scroll down a little bit more and get some more of your thoughts and feelings. Gooner 72 says, Tom, would you take Delaney, the Borussia Dortmund central midfielder? I think he's looked good in fits and spurts. I actually put him in my fantasy team at the start of the tournament because I quite like him. He hasn't able to return anything, and I did get rid of him quite quickly. But Delaney's kind of someone who's versatile enough that you can also drop in at centre-back if need be. But I'm not sure if he's the type that we're after necessarily. And I don't know if Dortmund would let him go. I can't actually remember how old Thomas Delaney is. Let me just have a quick check. Of that. Thomas Delaney is 29. So I'm not sure he's the right choice for an age profile of central midfielder that we should really be going for right now. If you sign him as a 29-year-old, then you're going to give him a 3-year deal, 4-year deal until he's 33. We need players that have got that sell-on value. So I'm not sure he's the right one. Jasmine says Fabian Ruiz can do a job. He can do more than a job. He's fantastic. It's Fabian Ruiz, an amazingly elegant player, really good for Napoli, arguably their best midfielder and has been for some time, even when Alan was there too. And I feel bad for the guy that he's not getting more minutes for Spain this tournament and mainly being used off the bench, because he was playing a fair few minutes in the lead up to the tournament and has been excellent when he has played. So Fabian Ruiz is a great player, but again, I think he would be very, very expensive. Xavi says, Tom, I like the idea of Renato Sanchez. How hard do you think it would be for us to get him? Very hard, exceptionally hard. I think they're looking for a huge fee. I heard rumours of 70 million euros being touted around. Bayern Munich are interested as well in getting him back. Arsenal are. I mean, there has been links. They've been very kind of unreliable links, but there have been links with Arsenal kind of tracking the situation. But I mean, his performances at the Euros have not been as good as the Granit Xhaka performance we saw yesterday. So if we're basing it on the Euros, I need to see more. But we don't just do that. And he was very, very good for Lille last season. Thank you, Wilson. Much appreciate that. Mr. Harrison says, hey, Tom, how would you compare Eduard to the other forwards that have been mentioned, like an Andre Silva, an Isak, or a Dominic Calvert-Lewin? All seem quite, all seems quite quiet from a Leicester perspective. It has, because I mean they're getting Patson Daka, so they're not going to be getting Eduard. His future remains uncertain, although there were rumours that he's happy to remain at Celtic for another season. How do I assess him and compare him to those other guys? I mean, the thing about Eduard, he's got kind of the height and the physicality, but he doesn't lose the pace. He's still very quick. He's good off the mark. He's got good acceleration. He's very composed in the final third at times as well. He hasn't been as good this season or as in 2021 as he has been in, say, 1920. But he is still done very well. And obviously with Celtic playing quite poorly this year, has suffered a little bit because of that, but it certainly isn't down to him. He's still got a great goal haul last campaign, and he should really get a move this summer. How do I compare him to the likes of Andre Silva and Isak? I think Isak's got a lot more potential, but he's not showing the same output as Eduard is at the current state, and it's only ever so slower. Dominic Calvert-Lewin is on a different, higher plane to Eduard in terms of his output and his competitiveness in the Premier League. And Andre Silva, I think, is in a similar bracket to Dominic Calvert-Lewin right now, with his goal output being so high for the Bundesliga last season. Only Lewandowski finished with a higher goal tally. So if you were to pick from all of those, I would choose Calvert-Lewin based upon the Premier League side of things and taking him from one of our rivals as well. Dependent on the fee, of course. Next in line would probably be Andre Silva. So that's where I would fall with those guys. Let's scroll down a little bit more to get some more thoughts and feelings from the chat box. Bradley says, do you think we would have got Patson Daka for the same price as Leicester? They seem to be allowed to take players in the cheap. Yes, I do, because the thing about Red Bull Salzburg is they don't tend to let players go for a huge amount of money unless they are exceptional. I mean, even Szoboszlai went for just under 20 million quid. So they don't tend to let players leave for huge fees because they can't command it from the league that they're playing in. They just keep on making money on the players that they sell. They do really well at that. But no, I'm not surprised that he went for that fee. And I don't think if Arsenal would have gone for him, that they would have been asked to pay anything more than Leicester have. So no. Other teams, maybe. Alan says, do you think we could get an extra 5 for Xhaka now? No, I don't, because, I mean, that performance that we saw yesterday is a performance that we've seen before this season. Like it's not. It doesn't surprise me that Granit Xhaka played in that way. That is a Granit Xhaka good performance. We've seen it time and time again. Gooner 72 says, what about Mikkel Damsgaard? Young Danish attacking midfielder, scored a great goal against, who was it against in the final game? Russia, wasn't it? Scored a really, really good goal in that game and looked lively and got an assist as well against Wales. So maybe he is someone that Arsenal want to look at. I haven't really seen too much of him beyond the tournament, so I'm not going to come out with an assessment of him like I know him from really well, because I don't. I've only seen him at the Euros, but he's looked like sprightly. But I'd need to do some more research into how he's got on for his club side. I don't know who his club side is, so someone that I really need to get kind of a little bit more into at the moment. False Manager says, Gabriel or Ben White, who's better? Well, I mean, Ben White had a better season last year. So, you mean right now you'd say Ben White is better than Gabriel. You'd hope that Gabriel can kind of step up that performance. I think if Gabriel performed as well as he did in the first, say, 3-4 months for the whole season, then we'd be saying Gabriel, but he did drop off quite a bit towards the end of the campaign. So I definitely would be looking into Ben White being an upgrade upon the centre-backs that we already have. So there you go. Counterpoint says, Tom, thoughts on Gerard Moreno as a potential striking option? Again, he's kind of towards, as far as I'm aware, the other end of the age spectrum. Let me have a quick look. He is 29. I think we need to be bringing in players that have got sell-on value. I mean, we've got two relatively old football age-wise strikers at the club. So a 29-year-old, I'm not quite sure that's the right age profile that Arsenal need to be looking at. Stephen says, hi, Tom. Question is, there's a marquee signing at Arsenal that no one linked us with, as we do this quite often, Ozil being the example. Maybe there could. I mean, Stephen, there's always the chance. We saw with the Matt Ryan deal in January of this year, isn't it, 2021? That they can be done out of completely nowhere. It's highly unlikely a deal of that magnitude would be able to go under the radar. But it's not to say that later on down the window we get linked to players that we aren't even being talked about now. That always kind of crops up. I mean, deals that happen towards the end of the window tend to become available because of dominoes falling at other clubs. So that's what you need to focus on. Let's go to, would I take Tammy Abraham, Drizzy? You see, it's I don't know what it is, but it's just something about Tammy Abraham that I'm not quite sure about. And I'm not sure if the level that he's been playing at Chelsea is right for him. I'm not sure if Arsenal, if where we want to go, which is obviously to the same level as Chelsea, which is back in the Champions League, if Tammy Abraham is the right striker to take us there. And I don't know how much about the fee. I mean, Chelsea want a very big fee for this guy, and I'm not sure if that's the right one. Plus, does Tammy Abraham get into other top 6 teams in the league? And if you answer that question with a no, do we want to get a striker that's not helping us to close that gap? So that's what you need to consider. The Jones says, I really, really like Isak as a player. He seems great on his feet, but I think flow will come good. And that's another big question about next season, is what's going to happen with following Balogun. How is he going to get the minutes? Where are those minutes going to come from? How is he going to perform? Is he going to make a case for a starting spot in the team next season? We're going to have to wait and see. Mick Lucas says, are you concerned that Villa are not going away from ESR? I'm not concerned about that situation in regards specifically to Villa's pursuit of Emile Smith-Rowe. I'm concerned that players the players that are really crucial to Arsenal's team are being bidded for by clubs of the level of Aston Villa. And when I say the level of Aston Villa, that's not to disrespect them. I'm talking about clubs that are, like Aston Villa, trying to replace Arsenal in the position in the table, as in challengers for European football. Aston Villa want to be where Arsenal are. And if they're starting to bid for our players, it's a bad sign. And Arsenal need to do as much as they can to change the perspective of other clubs and how Arsenal are viewed amongst those clubs. So I'm not concerned about this. I'd be very shocked if Arsenal sold him. And if he didn't sign a new deal, but you should be concerned that the bid in itself exists and that there is a perception that Arsenal's players can be got, especially our key players, from clubs on the level of Aston Villa. Henry says, Tom, when will you be starting your own ITK account? Never, mate. Absolutely never. I'd rather just call them out, to be honest. It's more fun. It's much more fun that way. I'd rather get you guys, the actual journalists on the show, that can give you the real info than start claiming information myself. Balaji says, Tom, what are your thoughts on Aaron Ramsdale? This hasn't really moved too much since we heard those initial links. There's been no bids, according to the local Sheffield United media, for either of him or Sanderberg so far. The thing is about Ramsdale is that I'd be okay with Arsenal getting him in as backup if we were spending like 10 million quid on him. But 20 million upwards is just mental. Like, I'm not interested in entertaining 20 million plus for Aaron Ramsdale. It's just not an economically sensible deal to do. So not for me, not a chance. Yes, Dan, he's a world-renowned ITK and he should be followed at all costs. Sahil says, Tom, like Nuno is going to Fenerbahce, why does nobody want to join Spurs? It's a good question. Without trying to, obviously, we're coming from an Arsenal perspective, so you can never really be taken too seriously on this one. If I try and come from a more neutral point of view, I think when you see what happened to them last season, they're playing in a really awful competition next year in the Conference League. They sacked their manager a week before a cup final that he took them to. Their financial situation is awful. They can't afford to go out and spend too much money. There's uncertainties about players like Harry Kane, Heung-min Son. It is a really unattractive profile of club for managers that want to kind of turn around their careers, because every manager that's gone there so far is either failed to win a trophy or their stock has fallen. I mean, you look at Mourinho now going to Roma. You look at Pochettino, obviously going from Spurs to PSG and not winning the title there. There is something about being Spurs coach which is not attractive, and that's great from an Arsenal point of view, and we love that fact. But for them, it's really concerning. And just coming from a football neutral perspective, they desperately need to change the perception of themselves to the wider market. Because, I mean, I'm not seeing any links besides I saw a link to Aouar the other day that I would question Aouar if he went there. That's not to say I really want him to come to Arsenal, so I'd be salty about it because you know how I feel about Aouar, but I would question kind of his mindset if he went to Spurs. I'm not sure that's a good move for him. So we'll see. I hope the comedy continues. I really do, because I'm enjoying every second of it. Abhinav says, why is it taking this long for Emile Smith Rowe to sign? It's just things take longer sometimes. His agent's making it harder for Arsenal. He wants to get in the best deal possible. He's away on holiday right now is another factor to put into that. He didn't go to the Euros like Tierney did, so he wasn't around to sign that new deal. So yeah, I wouldn't worry. It's just it'll get there. Don't worry. Is it because his chances would be limited if we sign a player like Maddison? I think that he is aware of the fact that Arsenal want an attacking midfielder, but I think he knows from when Odegaard comes in, he still gets plenty of minutes, so that hopefully will not be a problem. Yes, I did tell you did tell me, Stephen, about Kafka, or Kakfa, which is a great acronym for our ITK friends, of course. It's a great question, Yamama, and I don't have an answer for it, I'm afraid. Vishal says, any news on Lacazette's future? No, mate, absolutely none. There's no movement, there's no talks, there's no interest that's been made official by any other club. There's no movement. He expected to come back for pre-season and join up with the squads, and that's it so far. Things could change later on the window. We'll have to wait and see. If Arsenal do move for a striker or someone else comes in for Lacazette, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, absolutely nothing. We don't know. I'm actually getting a little bit bored of those comments. No Sleep says, Levy going to B&M. I love B&M. B&M's great. It's absolutely fantastic. Let's scroll up a little bit more. Drizzy says, I'm surprised no one wants the Spurs job. With the Kane sale, the manager could build their team almost in one window. Yasir says their best finish for years was 12th. They're being too cocky about this. Aston Villa, I think you're talking about. I don't think it's about being cocky. I think it's about ambition. It's about trying to obviously test the waters, find out where you can and what type of players you can go for. I don't think it's cockiness. I think it's naive to believe that Aston Villa are being cocky. I think that is if I was in charge of Aston Villa, that is exactly what I would be doing. Bidding for players of the teams that we're in rival and competition with. Absolutely. No, I saw no new midfield links so far other than Sabitzer that came out this morning. That is it, but it was a very loose link. It was just based upon interest so far. Thomas says, how is our friend Willian doing on his new club search? Again, no news. We were told by Fab that 100% he will leave Arsenal this summer, but there's no movement on anything so far. So very quiet in that area. Anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure, guys, as always, to speak to you every single morning. I will see you again, not even tomorrow. I'm going to see you a little bit later on today for the tactical breakdown on Merh Mulder, the Sassuolo right back that we've been linked to. Make sure you go and catch up on the Nuno Tavares tactical breakdown that we released yesterday, as well as the Arsenal transfer podcast that I did with Kian and Ludwig and Vinny that came out at 5 p.m. yesterday. So make sure you go and check all of that content out. It's on the channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. Drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed it, and subscribe if you are new around here with those notifications turned on. I'll see you again a little bit later on this afternoon. And as always, up the Arsenal.